Mike, it's good to see you, and thank you very much for accepting the invitation to join me for this. I say short. We'll see how it goes. Short video recording.
Yeah. Well, it's good to see you at last, Nick.
We follow each other on Instagram, and that's where the connection is, and that's how it all started. And I have to say straight away that I'm fascinated with your enthusiasm.
Yeah, I think I've been enthused by mechanical things ever since I was a little boy. But as I said, I'm actually a trained electronics engineer. That's my background. But I gave all that up, 5 years ago, and I'm effectively a watchmaker now. But my watchmaking skills are pretty much self-taught. So everything you see on Instagram generally has been something of a trial and error and self-taught. But, you know, I said I'm a watchmaker. I actually class myself as an engineer. And what do engineers do? Solve problems. Right.
And there are quite a few problems in a watch to be solved.
If there wasn't I find that if it hasn't got a problem to it, if you don't have to solve something, it's actually not much of a challenge. I'm not one for making models from kits or making models from drawings. I like to design from scratch. It's what's in there and comes out as a mechanical item. That's where I get my thrill, if you like.
Very good. So we always say that it takes two to make a watch, a watchmaker and machinist. But you being engineer, you're kind of half, and then all that combined in one person. You have freedom to play with your ideas and as you are pleased, which is
Nick, I do everything, or as much as I can, myself. I don't subcontract out anything. Apart from when I've completed the cases, I actually get those gold plated out, not because I can't do gold plating. I gold plate the movements myself. I can't get the thickness that I need. So, I've found that for very little outlay, I can get that done professionally and to a very high quality.
Very good, Mike.
And I think you know about gold plating. I think you've had a few issues with gold plating.
Yeah, we decided not to do it. Well, we are setting ourselves up for gold plating, but that will be a process. It's a lot of chemistry involved there.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how it all started. I read somewhere that your father used to repair watches.
Yeah, when I was very young, I don't know, 10-ish, my dad used to, he was not a watchmaker. He used to repair watches because in those days, in the late 50s, 60s, everybody had a mechanical watch. Everybody needed them repaired or at least serviced. And my father, being a clever guy, was taught to restore and repair watches. So he used to do that as a hobby, earned him a bit of money. And I can remember as a little boy just sitting next to him watching him do it. And there came a point he says, well, come on, have a go yourself. And that's what I did. And for quite a few years on a Sunday morning, I would repair watches that he brought in. But then, mid 70s, I suppose, everything collapsed. Everybody had electronic watches. And that I didn't touch a watch for 20 years. Then I had my own family and was looking around for a hobby. And I went to a watch fair and I bought a couple of old pocket watches and started to repair them again. And the funny thing is, it's like riding a bike. You remember what you've got to do. And one day, my father was round at my house and he said, well, why don't you make one? I remember now, I was showing him a copy of the British Horological Journal, and it had George Daniels watches. And he says, well, why don't you make one? And I thought, I don't know about that. But there you go. And I made one. Took me a couple of years. And after that, once you've made one, you don't really go back to repairing them. You just want to make another one and another one.
Well, you make it sound a little bit too easy. It's, you decided to make a watch, then you made a watch. But clearly there was a period of preparation of some kind. You had to set up your workshop. You use, I can see on Instagram that you use some CNC machinery and of course hand tools and, mix of, tell me more about your workshop.
Okay, the first watch I made was about 1997, and I only had a watchmaker's lathe, hand tools. I had a drill that was converted so that I could make cut wheels on it. I mean, this is a pocket watch, so it was a fairly reasonable size. And then in time, and has taken time. The 1997 was the first one I made. I bought a small printer CNC machine, I don't know, 15 years ago, I managed to make to machine out cases. The cases were in plastic because that's all it could machine, but it proved to me that was the way to do it. I then spent a lot of money, a lot of personal money, and bought a CNC machine. So I have a Tormac CNC that's well capable of making cases. I can push it and make watch parts with it as well. You have to learn how to use it because it hasn't got the built-in accuracy, but you can, a bit of engineering and you can make it do it. So I make virtually everything on my CNC machine now. I have a couple of watchmakers lathes, which you obviously need. But I've every watch I make, I don't make all the parts anymore. I've done that. You don't make it. Once you've made one screw, you make more. That's boring. You've done it. So the thrill to me is designing the watch, making it hopefully look good, aesthetically pleasing, and then working out how to make each part. And I have now got to the point where I tend not to make the wheels, basically because it's very time consuming, and I can get a wheel train from a conventional watch, and that will save me a lot of time, and there's no real thrill to me in making a wheel anymore. The thrill to me is designing the watch, designing it to look good, maybe using different materials, and going from there.
Tell me more about how did you, because you use wheels and perhaps some other components from other manufacturers, and in order to incorporate them into your main plates and bridges and into your design, you have to read what we call the DNA of the watch, which is you have to know where those points are, where your wheel is going to be planted and where your stem is going to sit and so on. How did you overcome a problem of reading the DNA? I'm leading you to sort of to disclose to me your ways of measuring distances, and tell me more about it.
I mean, these days you use 3D CAD to model watches. There's no pen and paper anymore. It's really not it. So I use SolidWorks, and what I do is build up models of every component. So yes, you're right, the DNA of a watch, I will pull out the third wheel, for instance, and I will measure that. I will count the teeth, I will measure the diameter, measure the thickness, pinions, pivots, and then build a 3D model of that. So that's in my library. I know that the third wheel of an ETA whatever is this model. So I now have that model. And I've done that for a variety of components. I tend to use less Swiss movements because I find that I can use cheaper Chinese movements and spend time improving them. And so I can use the components from a Chinese 330 tourbillon or something, improve the component and model it and use those. That enables me to build quite complex things like tourbillons and what have you at a reasonable price. Bear in mind, I don't do this commercially, Nick. I do this for fun.
Purely labor of love.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, that is interesting because there is that the moment you mention Chinese, nobody will take you seriously.
I know.
You know that, and it is what it is. You know, I have no prejudice, and I respect. I mean, if you read the story of how Chinese started making their own watches and how they've created the entire watch industry from literally one tiny little workshop, that is an amazing story in itself. There is no, when we talk about engineering of any kind, and especially horology, there is no room for arrogance. And I like to think that we should call ourselves just the students of horology. Mike, you agree with that?
I have bought Chinese movements now for many, many years. I bought some fairly recent, and the quality is superb. And, you know, I'm afraid that I could stand many of these parts up against any Swiss movement, and people would go, well, yeah, the quality is good. So the Swiss parts are more and more difficult to get hold of unless you use, you know, obviously vintage watches. But yeah, you can say what you like about the Chinese movements, but I actually use the wheels and whatever, and they are superb. No question.
Very good. And jewels, where do you source your jewels?
Well, if I buy a movement, I will often use the jewels that are in the movements. But if not, like a lot of people, I go to watch fairs and whatever, and I have boxes and boxes of vintage jewels that I use. Because bear in mind, I never make two watches the same. So every watch is unique and individual, so I can choose the parts I use. And if I can't get them, I can make them.
I'm the one of your designs that really stood out and got me so to think about the way how you think. It was clear that you think out of box. Is that square movement? So all the bridges are square, and you have the sharp lines. It's almost more like cubism of horology. You don't see that often. Actually, no modern watchmaker will certainly concern himself with that style, but I love it. I think it's very cool.
Yeah. This one?
Yeah, turn it the other way around. Not that one. Not that one. The one. It's a square main plate and square bridges. I will insert here a photo.
You're going to have to insert it. I haven't got it right next to me. But yeah, the fun of designing a watch for me is actually it's like a bit of artwork, really. You know, I work with a blank bit of paper and I look for a little bit of inspiration from something, and I will then create something that is around that. And you mentioned the square one. If you remember, I did one with spirals, so the whole bridge was a spiral, and you know, that, believe me, that's a challenge to get that right. That one.
Oh.
So everything there is a spiral. Now, you know, that takes quite a lot of thinking about, and that's where the real challenge is. Not only to then design it and put it into CAD, but then obviously to machine it, so that every step becomes a challenge. And when it doesn't become a challenge, it's no fun. And actually, when it's complete, it goes in a box because there's no fun with it afterwards.
So you said it's not a commercial operation, but you're definitely not chasing customers. If someone likes your watch and
I'm not
get in touch, that's fine. But you don't mind that. But you're not interested in making
no
profit in a horology.
No, I do. I do an occasional commission, and that tends to be for people that I know and like, because, you know, I was a director of an electronics company for a long time. I don't need the hassle. I do it now because I love doing it, because I enjoy doing it. And I'm very lucky to be able to do that. You know, that when you can do something that you enjoy and love, well, you're made. And that's what I do.
Well, that's ultimate, isn't it?
Yeah. 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 So, you know, that's my fun. But clearly, you know, I would love super duper fancy machines. I have to work within the limitation of my own budget. And therefore that actually adds to the challenge, because you think, well, how can I make that precision part on the equipment I've got? So yeah, that's where we are on that. And everything I do, I like to do something different each time. You know, it's I'm not. I've said before, there's no two watches I've made are ever the same. They might be similar, but they're not the same.
So far, the highlight, the moment where you really kind of pat yourself on the back and said, Mike, well done. What was it? Which one?
Wow, that's a good question. I think, if I was absolutely honest with you, it's probably the first one that ticked. You know, if I remember, it was a pocket watch one, and you know, I put it together, and it worked, and it ticked, and it went well, and I thought, yeah, you can do it now, and you don't have to be clever to do this. You know, a watch is not. It's not rocket science, is it? You know, they were fascinating bit of mechanics, but they're not rocket science. That the real skill these days comes in finishing them. But for me, the real challenge actually is from start to finish. Design it, and then put it on your wrist, and then put it in a box, actually, because I'm on to the next one.
Well, I have to tell you this. I wish you're closer to us. And I think we will have a lot of fun because we do have a workshop which is fairly sort of well set up. We got a number of toys there, and our biggest problem is finding a people who would spend the time in a workshop. Actually, we had an opening night where we invited members of Watch and Clock Association of Australasia, our Sydney, and there were some other watchmakers outside of Sydney, and they came along, and we open our doors. We invite them to see the machinery in action, and I told them that night, if you ever feel like designing something, making something, our doors are open. You're more than welcome.
Yeah.
You know, start Friday afternoon and finish by Monday, or you know, come at any time. I have to say that was a few years ago. Unfortunately, not one colleague of mine took that offer seriously. But you know, that enthusiasm is missing. I think watchmakers have made their mind. They're either repairing watches or not making them, if you know what I mean. You're a rare person you're rare a horologist who actually spend time behind the bench and make things.
Yeah, I mean, I've always made things. I've always loved making things, and I think there are the people about. It just needs to tease them out. I believe that people are born engineers, you know, or some people are born engineers, and those are the people that will start taking things to pieces, finding out how they work, and then want to make the thing themselves or something different. But yeah, finding those skills about is difficult these days. I think that, you know, you go back 20, 30 years, actually nobody wanted to be a watchmaker, did they? But I've noticed a big resurgence now. I do get involved in the Birmingham City University, their horology course, and you know, there's half a dozen students every year that start the course there, and most come out as qualified horologists. there is, I think you probably agree, there always seems to be two compartments. There's the clock people and there's the watch people. I don't quite know why that is, apart from the fact that if you're a watchmaker like I am, you built up tools that can repair and make watches, but the tools are no good for repairing and making clocks. You know, it's just a matter of scale, isn't it?
Pretty much so, yes. And watchmakers, watch repairers, should I say, they like their benches very clean. They don't like coolants and lubricants and dirty rags and big spanners around, where clockmakers actually enjoy, you know, working with machinery and you know, cutting wheels and turning and all that stuff. So two different trades. End result is same, just different scale. But yeah, we say that the best watchmakers are clockmakers, and the best clockmakers are watchmakers.
Oh, right.
Because they come from, you know, different school of thought. I have more respect for clockmakers. I have to say that.
Yeah. Right. So I wanted to ask you your Timiscus movement bases. I mean, where did the inspiration for that come from?
Well, depends who you ask. If you ask Josh, my son, he would claim the credit for discovering Timiscus. It was actually, I stumbled on it looking for, it was actually on Instagram, and I was fascinated by the work of knife makers. And knife makers are very, very clever people. I think if we to look for next generation of horologists, probably I will look at the locksmiths and knife makers, because some of them very, very serious, and they use Timiscus as unfortunately not as a blade material, but as handles. And I was fascinated with the colors. Although they use different method to bring colors out of 3 composite alloy, but as a watchmaking material, it's ideal. It's corrosion-free. It won't corrode. It's very light. Beautiful colors bring out of. It can be colored, but problem with Timiscus is very hard to machine, because think of this like you want to make an instrument, a violin or guitar, out of wood full of knots. The thinner you slice it, the more it want to go out of shape that you design. We got a lot of wastage. Probably 4 out of 10 components are out of tolerance, purely because the nature of 3 composite alloy. But it looks good, but you know, it's hard to machine. So we discover those Timiscus makers in America, and I think this is the best thing that happened to our project last year.
Yeah, well, it's totally unique. You're the only people using it, aren't you?
Yeah, and even the Timiscus people in Utah, in America, they're quite surprised. Every time they see a watch component, they go crazy. They love it because they spend 15 years developing the process of fusing 3 alloys together and, you know, bonding them. And the funny thing is, they were quite surprised because once we start machining, going deeper into layers, even if it's, you know, 1 mil or 2 mil, there are no cavities. It's perfectly fused. This is amazingly well fused material. So we love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just some of the pictures I've seen, they're just absolutely superb.
You know what I'm thinking right now? We have some leftovers that I will send you, and I'm sure you will, because you use Unita 6497 and 98 wheels as well sometimes. You would be able to put them in a good use. Maybe you will make a watch that will contain some of our leftover parts. How about that?
How about that? I'd love to have a look. Yeah, you send them to me. I'd love that. I love that. Yeah, great.
Okay, so how is your day structured from morning till late? How do you work?
I come into the workshop probably around 8 in the morning, and generally my wife is out. I mean, this last 4 months of lockdown has been disrupted, hence the long hair. I then don't tend to come out of my workshop until about 6. And that I might do that 6 days a week, because just remember, I do it for fun. It's what I love to do. What I will tend to do though is mix up what I do. I might do a bit of designing, a bit of machining, so that I'm not just focused on one aspect of the watch. That way, it breaks up the day and it keeps your interest and your enthusiasm there. Because I think, I can sit in front of a computer designing for so many hours and you can go dry. I suppose it's like writer's cramp or whatever. You just dry up. So I'll put the computer down and go and pick up a file or go and machine one of the parts. And over the months, then those parts will all come together. And what I do find almost frustrating is that whilst I'm making one watch, I'm thinking of the next, and sometimes that can be a little bit off-putting because I'm thinking, no, you've got to finish this before you get on to the next one. But that's the development engineer in your head. If you're not careful, you'll never finish it and you go on to the next one. So I have to be quite strict with myself and say, no, you can't start the next one until you've at least finished this and put it out to test.
So you make one watch at a time, practically. You think of maybe second one, but you like to start and finish.
Yeah, I do. Otherwise, I can get too distracted, and also you drift away from what's in your head in the design, because I don't tend to. Okay, everything's in CAD, and I might make a few notes on a bit of a scrap of paper, but really the design's in here, and so you need to keep the flow going. So usually it's at the latter stages when I'm machining parts. I've got them out on my CNC, which is in another room. I can then leave it to machine the case while I'm thinking of the design of the next one. But it is it's a constant process, actually. I get quite frustrated if I can't think of what the next project's going to be.
What is the most difficult, what is the most difficult thing that you have to overcome on daily basis? What I'm trying to say is, if I have this piece of equipment, or if I have this skill, or if I have more of something, my life would be easier. What is it?
Dust and dirt. Because I have a relatively small workshop. My main workshop, which I'm sitting in now, is actually attached to the lounge of my house. And so I've got dust and dirt, it's part of the house. So it's not exactly a clean room. And in this room, I will do everything from escapement parts to finishing off the case. So that's not ideal in any area. And so when I'm coming to the end of the watch, getting the dust and all the other stuff clear, it is actually a problem. I find it quite frustrating. I'm just finishing a watch and there's another little bit of dust in there. So it's that. If I had endless, I'd have 3 or 4 different rooms to do all this in. I do my gold plating in the garage.
Well, so. If I can tell you how I overcame that problem. We have same problem with dust and dirt, because our assembly office is in a heritage building right in the city, and we have a very simple windows, and there's always dust and dirt coming from the street and so on. It's busy. So because I'm 57, I always ask my youngest apprentice, check this dial and crystal and hands, look for any foreign particles. And they're very enthusiastic about it. They want to find them. They love finding imperfections. And then I say, fine, now remove them. So they do that for me.
Well, there you go. I haven't got an apprentice.
Well, talking about apprentices, do you ever see yourself like coming to a realization that you would like to share maybe, what you already know with someone like apprentice, not necessarily full-time employment, but someone who would show an interest? Would you open your doors?
Yes, and I have done, in as much that, as I said, I got attached to Birmingham City University with a horological course there, and I was an external examiner for a number of years there, and I used to go in and sit down and talk to the students then, and that I found, I hope they found it rewarding. I certainly found it rewarding, because they would ask you questions that, you know, I'd never even thought of. And bear in mind, I'm not a trained horologist. I'm not a trained watchmaker. So, you know, they'd ask me questions, and you go, "Whoa, I never really thought of that. I just did it." You know, I do quite enjoy talking to younger students who A, are incredibly enthusiastic, and B, ask questions that you think, "Oh, I never really thought about that." From my perspective here, you know, my workshop is part of my house, so I can't have people in here all the time. But it is nice to go out and talk to students occasionally.
I appreciate it. Well, there is a benefit of having a workshop in the house. Clearly, you don't have to travel to work.
That's right.
Which is not a small thing. It takes me about 30 minutes one way every day, and it's 1 hour of my life gone just sitting on a bus. And there's not much you can really do about it. So you're privileged.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you know, I used to commute, actually, getting on for an hour there and back a day. So 2 hours a day lost when I used to work in electronics. And I noticed those extra 2 hours, you can do so much more with them. I don't miss the commute. I don't miss the commercial pressure either. Actually, I as I said, I'm blessed. I do what I like to do, which is very, very lucky.
Well, Mike, I hope that someone who is watching this video is in a similar situation like you, close to retirement, or maybe even retired engineer. Why not take up horology as a hobby? Get into it, and certainly,
absolutely.
This is. I really like the fact that you're open about what you do, and you're telling us your story, which I'm sure will encourage people to do it. And when you said it's not a rocket science, I agree. And then nanosecond later, I disagree. And then a second later, I agree again, because it is difficult, and it's not difficult. Depends how you approach it, and it can be done. Certainly, we know that great horological masterpieces were created, made, manufactured, handmade 200 years ago, before the electricity, before CAD, before SolidWorks. You know, it's possible.
You've got to remember that a watch, I mean, you look at it and you go, wow, that's complicated. That's one big problem. But it's not. It's actually thousands of little problems. And you can solve all the little problems. And once you've solved all the little problems, it all comes together.
I'll use that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
You know what? When I think of it, if you explain that problem to a customer the way you just explained it to me, you can charge more for that.
Well, there you go.
So what is? I know the answer to this one, but I'll let you tell us again. Who's your inspiration?
I haven't actually got any inspiration, or what? There's no one person, maker, designer that I think, oh, I want to be like them. I'm happy to pinch little ideas from everybody, but I have no one view that's the ideal watch. For me, everyone should be different, and I enjoy the conceptual challenge of creating something absolutely new and unique. Albeit, all the little elements are not new, are they? All the wheels and the escapement is not actually new, but it's how it goes together, and that's for me the challenge, and that's where I pull my inspiration. More recently, if you look at the whole aspect of it in trying to design a watch from scratch, I try and look at a shape and say, actually, I'm going to design that as a hexagonal watch. So, that element of inspiration is just a hexagon and work from there. But I don't think that's really what you were getting at. If you were getting at, what is the watch to try and be, or what's the watchmaker to try and be like, I want to be a bit of all of them. Some of the, I could name half a dozen watchmakers that are absolutely superb in terms of their quality, their styling. Pull bits of them all together. That's what I try and do.
Very good. And if there is a particular technique that you think you would like to spend more time on improving your skills in a certain direction, what would that be right now at this point of time? What would you like to do better?
I think I would like to make some of the tinier components better, but in my view, that means I require different equipment, an EDF machine, for instance, that sort of thing. Other than that, it's just honing my skills, or trying something different.
Very good. Are you a reader? Do you read horological books, or?
I read horological magazines such as the British Horological Institute magazine. I have watchmaking books aplenty, but I tend to have them as reference books. And if you're referring, do I read novels? I probably read 5 novels in my life. So I'm not a reader. I will quite happily flick through horological magazines and pick out what I want, but I'm not one for sitting down and reading a book.
Is there a watch out there by other maker, not that you sometimes would kind of desire to have in your collection, on your wrist? What is your dream watch?
I don't think I've got one dream watch. Years ago, when I was still interested in electronics, my dream watch was a Junghans Mega Solar, which I was lucky enough to be able to afford at the time, and I've had this 25 years or so now, and I now use it as my reference watch because, of course, it's absolutely spot on accurate. I don't wear it anymore. In fact, I haven't even got a watch on. Well, that's not good, is it?
Same here.
Yeah. But there's obviously a few makers that I like the styling of, and one of those is the McGonagals, John and Stephen McGonagals watches. I find the styling of those absolutely superb. I just like them because they are different. I don't think anybody else has a watch with that. I don't know, it's just the way he holds the jaws in the jewels in the little jaws, and the finish on those is superb. But obviously there's quite a few others. I'm not one for the Omegas and the Rolexes of this world. I'm afraid they're, they might be a good investment, but for me, they're much of a muchness.
Well, what can I say, Mike? I'm sure that our viewers who tune in will appreciate such a frank report to what keeps you busy. And I again believe that you will be an inspiration to those who would like, or regardless of age, maybe a kid, maybe sort of someone our age, or older, who will find your story inspiring and inspirational and be inspired by you, and will try to get into horology with whatever is on his disposal. That means not being limited by amount of toys in a shed or tools, just get into it.
Yeah, that's the thing. Just do it. I think that's how a lot of engineers do things. They have a concept or they have to repair something, and so it's about solving a problem. And if that solving a problem is how to make it or how to make the machine to make it, that's what it's about.
Well, small surprise for you is this is coming your way. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, T-shirt. I can, yeah. Excellent.
Yeah. It's got freedom to make and right to repair. I can't think of a better person who is going to wear this with pride than a horologist and engineer. So that's coming your way.
I will look.
Tell me your size later.
Yeah, when we're off camera, definitely. Yeah, Nick, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
It's my pleasure, and thank you very much for your time.